Somebody's going to have to aim. And you can put a few up here so that people can see them. All right. Attention. This is the beginning of a brand new Bible study class here on our Thursday night Bible study. We brought in a special guest with us who's brought in props for our exciting study of the dinosaurs. Is it working?
Yeah.
All right. So go ahead, James. Tell us what you got.
Many years ago, this has been one of my hobbies and kept me out of a lot of trouble doing other things. I collected fossils, artifacts. This is a dinosaur bone. A lot of people say they've never seen a dinosaur. This is actually a dinosaur egg. There is some small feces inside of it. I was able to have
that is so cool. That is heavy,
X-rayed.
too.
It actually has turned into a solid rock, but it's still got the shell around it.
Yeah, you can tell it.
And it has the sand underneath it. This was uncovered probably from about 5 to 10 foot down. Okay?
So that's cool.
The x-rays do show a small animal inside, broke apart. It's not a full scale, or that would really run the price way up on that.
Yeah.
But I would love to go and find these things, but I'm not able to do it. So I collect. And I like to share. The Science Center, we've got a lot of fossils at the Science Center. We traveled probably about 30 years ago. The Science Center was able to take a whole bunch of people, and we went to, Arizona. We traveled into Utah, and we were able to dig with the professional company, and that's what they do, and we kind of devote our time volunteering to help. And the one thing that caught me just out of the ordinary is knowing that we were probably about 5 feet down, solid rock, digging stuff out. We found grass that looked like it had just been buried. It was still green. And when I start questioning people about it, nobody really had an answer.
We understand.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about it tonight. Yeah.
Yes. So you're thinking millions of years old. Humans created the fact of that time. We still don't know. It's not 100% accurate. So I love collecting these things, and I've got a few more things, and I couldn't bring a lot of stuff.
This is really cool.
I took this to one of the college classes I had a few years back, well, quite a few years back. And we were talking about it, and I let them pass it around, and I didn't tell them what it was. I told them it's a fossil. It's from a dinosaur. It's called coprolite. It's dinosaur feces. And then when I told them what it was, they're like, "Ooh, I want to drop it." And I said, "Well, it'll break if you drop it." I said, "It's not poop now. It's solid stone."
Yeah.
But you can see some of the blood inside of the feces that was there. I've seen these to be, I don't know, bigger than these chairs out there. Wow. Yeah.
Healthy.
Yeah.
I'm having an uncomfortable feeling about that.
Now these are things. It just fascinates me. This is a dinosaur bone. I can't tell you what dinosaur it's from. This is from Arizona. It has been cut and polished on the side. You can see the blood cells inside that stone. And it's just cool. There's a lot of people collect these. They make jewelry out of them, necklaces, rings, all kinds of cool stuff. But the bottom line is they were there. In our school system, I meet a lot of children who never seen things like this, so I'm able to share it with them. I've seen the students that hadn't even been to the beach, never seen a seashell, so I'm able to take it home with you.
That's awesome.
That's enough for now.
Okay.
If you're ever interested and want to see more, just let me know. All right.
All right. So we're going to leave these up here till after the class, so you can. What's that? The ones from the woolly mammoth? I'll bring those next time, because yes, they're in my office, and you've seen my office, so we will not do it in a short term.
Actually, they're digging stuff up now. I mean, just everyday stuff that you'd never believe. The woolly mammoth, they're digging these up now with all their skin still on them now.
Yes.
Wow.
So,
And I'm going to tell you, when we were in Deering, Alaska, Daniel Drum and I had to help a guy who's a fossil hunter, and he's mainly finding woolly mammoth and mastodon
fossils, which must have been roaming that area pretty heavy.
Yes, sir.
But he had a pair of complete tusks of I think that was a woolly mammoth, but they were about, I want to say 12 feet long. I might be exaggerating
They were
slightly.
500 pounds. or
But we had to hold them on the scale so he could weigh them because he was selling them. I think he got like $10,000 for those. But every year when it floods along the rivers, new sections of riverbank get carved out, and he goes up and down the rivers all around there and finds fossils. And in fact, our two new people that went with us to Deering, Andrea and Melanie, thank you, I just blinked out. He gave them small, what he calls bark, and that's layers of a woolly mammoth tooth or tusk, you know, and it's really cool. But yeah, so we.
What's interesting to me is that, like, any one of us would walk past any of that stuff.
Yeah.
The woolly mammoth stuff and
The full tusk you'd know.
but the stuff that he was showing us, the pieces that he still gets money for, we would walk right past it thinking that's a piece of wood, or the
Yeah,
rock,
because like
or the
petrified teeth either look like rock or wood, but he knows what he's looking for.
That's like me with the airheads around the lake here.
Yes.
My dad and brother could find them, and that looks like a piece of rock.
Well, we have all kinds of people. When you go to the beach, you find all these sharks' teeth and, you know, megalodon teeth or whatever it is, those giant sharks. And I can never find one, so I don't, you know, so. But
I'm the guy who, like, after I'm there today and I leave tomorrow, this little kid found something this big. Same spot, I think.
well, that's my fishing career. You should have been here yesterday, or right after you left, they started biting. All right, so I got 3 commercials. We went out of order, but I think Donnie will still love us. Yeah. So one, just a note, Jim Wesson's funeral is Saturday at 3. Jim Wesson has been a member of St. John's for a lot of years. I think just about all the years I've been here. I think in 1996 he retired from ministry and transferred to St. John's. But he was active Missouri Synod pastor for 33 years, just a good friend. I'm having a unique start to the sermon on Saturday. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it involves coloring books, so I'm not going to say any more. But that's because Jim liked to tease me and about everybody else he knew. So, but that's, if you can come, please do. Jim died on June 18th, and he was being cremated, so there wasn't a rush, but he had specifically told his wife that he wanted me to do his funeral. And that's you know, I felt honored that he had said that, but the disadvantage was I was in Alaska for 10, 11 days, and then I was in Texas for 10 days. Really was, so that's why it's being a little delayed. But there's not really a funeral home doing advertising for this, so I thought I'm going to try to just get the word out a little bit more. But Saturday at 3. James, I think you're helping with sound system, so yeah. Well, one of you, somebody is. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So also, I'm just going to give you a quick report. So I came about 10 to 6, I guess I got here, and the sharing center was wide open, but there were about 10 vehicles here that weren't the people who were volunteering, that were, it's amazing to see how much stuff was going out. So what did Michael tell you, Michael Jr.?
No, it was Doug that said.
Oh, Doug said.
2 loads in and 5 loads out.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 loads came in. We had a couple people went out to pick up furniture from homes and stuff. But it was so neat because Denise got a phone call from a young lady that was about to start her foster parenting classes, and it's a pretty big deal to be certified for foster parents. But she already got a phone call today that they needed her to take 2 children. And she hasn't even started her classes yet. But the need for foster parents is tremendous, by the way. And so she won't get benefits for a while because nothing's been set up. She hasn't even been approved for anything. So she came, and we were able to help give her some gift cards to Food Lion so she can get milk and some of the stuff that they're 1 and 3 or 2 and 3, 2 and 3, I guess. but she was picking out clothes and all kinds of stuff. We had at least 2 moms that were expecting babies, and it was so neat to see them picking out maternity stuff and baby clothes and things like that. But Tuesday, I was one of the volunteers that helped, and there's some people that come pretty much every Tuesday and pick up food because they're living on fixed income, and all those prices just have gone up so much. And so it's not that they can get everything here, but they can get enough stuff that then they can pay for everything.
They also told us that we are the only food bank in Catawba County or surrounding area that will let you pick out your own food.
The traditional way is if you say you need food, they go and box stuff. And you know, if I'm boxing stuff, I'm giving you mainly green beans because I want to get it out of the building. But you may not like green beans, which would make sense. But but we didn't want to do that because then it just ends up being wasted. You know, so we said, well, you come pick out what you like. You know, and don't take it all, but take enough for a week, and then, you know, that's, but it's just interesting. I taped up 6 boxes that could hold food for Tuesday, and they were all gone by end of Tuesday. I taped up 5 more real quick than tonight, and I'll be interested to see.
If anybody's bored, if you need something to do, we desperately need
We can put you to work. Figure 2 hours. If you can give us 2 hours now and then, you'll make a difference. But it's just interesting because that sharing center is bigger than I ever anticipated in terms of the number of families that it's helping. Because it's, I was kind of hoping we'd help like 5 to 10 families a week. It's 10 to 20 families a night. We're open on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it's just amazing how many people keep coming.
We just found out today that one of the families that has come every week for the last month is coming from Marion.
Yeah, they're driving all that way because.
That's what I said.
From where?
Marion. Because they can, you know, furniture keeps coming in and going out. So if you need furniture, you can come pick out what's going to be there. You never know what's going to be there. But clothing comes in and goes out. And if you got kids, you know, boy, they're always outgrowing something. And if you're on limited income, really makes a difference if you can.
It is really cool to see the people who, when they come and take what they need, say, well, I have clothes from maternity, or I have things my baby used at the beginning that I don't need anymore. I'm going to bring it over. Or the people that are like, I can't pay anything, and Scott says no, and they said, can we help pick up things?
Yeah, they offered to be part of our pickup or delivery team.
So
yeah, we'll do that for sure.
There was a woman over there tonight that just said she took out stuff, and she said, I've got baby stuff I'm going to bring back.
Right.
And she has a breast pump she's going to bring back.
And I've been asked for that many times.
Yeah.
But Michael, you've went out and picked up stuff. What is your experience? And delivered?
Well, I mean, the delivery is, I think, and I've been talking to some of my coworkers, some other people, like you said, when we first started this thing, you assume you're going to help 1 or 2 families, and you don't realize how many people there are that are, you know, that need help, or you go to places that need furniture, people sleeping on air mattresses, people.
Yeah, you've delivered to some of those.
Yeah, and it's just, you don't realize there's a lot larger segment of our society that's living like that and having issues.
85 to 90% of those people are working people, or they're on a fixed income.
Yeah, and we delivered the mattress. There was a woman with a young boy, and they didn't even have the bed frames at that point. But when I put the mattress in his room, he had his own room. He was happy that he said, put it up against the wall. He said, because then I'll have a crack. I can sleep up against the wall. And he was so happy just to have the mattress, because him and her were both sleeping on probably a queen size air mattress. But just, I mean, it's just amazing.
And some of them are domestic abuse situations, and they get out, but they have nothing because everything, you know, they just were lucky to get out. We've helped about 4 or 5 families that had lost pretty much everything in fires, and you know, it's just really amazing the opportunities. And you know, I did that one video about furniture and stuff, and that got like 5,000 shares and stuff, and it's amazing. The word of mouth goes out, and now we don't have to do any advertising at all because it's there. But so anyway, but what I wanted to say is continue to pray for that, and if you got a little spare time, even an hour or two, we can put you to work. One other thing coming up is our Vacation Bible School. Our Vacation Bible School at St. John's is unique. It's a little different. We have unique facilities because we have an amphitheater that seats 600 people, so we can do plays outside, and we got the gym where we feed people, and then we got all these facilities where we can do games and all kinds of stuff. But an encouragement to, one, be involved, because there's Bible study every night. The week of VBS, Thursday the 4th of August, we will not have this class, but there will be a Bible study class that night, like all the nights of VBS. But invite people to come. Especially children. There's a lot of children that aren't brought to Sunday school at all anymore. That's kind of a dying thing, it seems like. I mean, even with the church-going people, it's rarer for kids to be. When I was growing up, everybody went to Sunday school every Sunday morning. That's just the way it was. And but now it's not that way. But VBS is packaged where it's so much fun, and maybe they don't even realize we're teaching them about Jesus, you know. Well, they would realize it, but so just consider inviting. That's July 31st, Sunday evening, through Thursday, August 4th. All right, so now that's our 3 commercials. We've satisfied the legal demands of. So now we're gonna. So I'm going to tell you, I have all kinds of young people that start questioning the Bible because they are told a view of the history of the earth and the solar system, and you know the basics, Big Bang, and you know, all matter was compressed into a little ball, and it blows up and cools, and we get all the sun and the moon and all the other things, and then, you know, the earth cools off, and then almost miraculously, it would be a miracle, magically, life begins in a primordial ooze struck by lightning or something, and then life begins, and it keeps changing and changing and changing, and then, you know, 700 million years before people were evolved, and I'm telling their story, you know, there were dinosaurs, and then some of them changed. But what do you know? You know from evolutionary theory that dinosaurs and people never existed at the same time. We're going to talk a lot about that over the next couple of weeks. But that's the view. And then people read their Bibles, and they don't see, where are the dinosaurs? And I'm going to tell you, I have a frustration. I have a terrible frustration. You'll see it because dinosaurs are in there all the time. But words are translated according to people's preconceived notion. So even what we call sacred scripture, in the original languages, what would be the equivalent of dinosaur ends up being something else. So we're going to look at that, and I'm going to read 3 passages from the King James Version, but I'm going to need 3 volunteers who will read a verse, the same verse I'm going to read in King James Version, whatever version you have. So and they're all Psalms, so middle of your Bible. So who will be brave and read a single verse? Melinda, Abby, and Denise. I saw 3 hands. All right, so Melinda, Psalm 92, verse 10. All right. Abby, Psalm 29, verse 6. And Denise, Psalm 22. By the way, quiz, not just for Denise. What is Psalm 22 famous for? When do we use it in the church here? Good Friday. Yeah, Good Friday. Psalm 22, 21, Denise. Okay. All right. And I'm starting with yours, Denise, so be ready. I'm going in reverse order. All right, because I already had it open to that. So here's what it says in the King James Version, and then I want you to listen. What version do you have with you?
This is the ESV, and you said you read 22:21, right?
Yeah, chapter 22, verse 21. So here's what it says in the King James Version. Save me from the lion's mouth, for thou hast heard me from the horns of the unicorns. All right, that's in the King James Version. Okay.
Save me from the mouth of the lion. You have rescued me from the horns of the wild oxen.
The wild oxen. Okay, all right, now just, you got to play with me. This isn't about dinosaurs yet, but it kind of is. So then, Psalm 29, verse 6, I think that was you, Abby. So this is, he maketh them also to skip like a calf, Lebanon and Syrian like a young unicorn. Now notice that word.
He makes Lebanon to skip like a calf, and Syrian like a young wild ox.
Oh, young wild ox. So that, what version was that one? Okay, same as hers. So,
What was the last one?
that was Psalm 29, verse 6. All right, and so Melinda, I'm saving you for last, best for last. So, we will judge. I'm just kidding. All right, so there you go. This is Psalm 92, verse 10. But my horn shalt thou exalt like the horn of a unicorn. I shall be anointed with fresh oil. Well, that is appropriate for you. And boy, that God worked that out great. So there, now read that same verse in whichever one you got.
It's the New International Version.
Okay.
You have exalted my horn like that of a wild ox. Fine oils have been poured upon me.
Okay, so the Hebrew word, the King James Version translates unicorn. In the NIV and ESV is said to be wild ox. So what does the Hebrew word mean, and what is it referring to? It is referring to a one-horned animal, probably not a wild ox. No, there's different versions. There are some that have one horn. So, but yeah, it is a rhinoceros, exactly. You know, that's exactly what it's referring to. And it's a scary beast. Do you know that rhinos kill more people than about any other animal in Africa? Because you tick them off, you're impaled, you know. And they got enough weight. But, you know, so what I wanted you to see, that had nothing to do with dinosaurs per se, but I wanted you to see the translation problem, because our intellectual people, they're trying to translate Hebrew words that are somewhat vague in meaning. One-horned animal, and so there seemed to develop a consensus that's an oxen or whatever, you know, a wild ox. I don't know why they came to that consensus, but that's the translation problem. So now we're going to look at a slightly different one, and this is referring to dinosaurs. Okay, so oh, I got a bunch of them. All right, so can't read my writing. Oh, that's kind of fun. All right, so I'm going to need people to read these in not King James Version again. So I need, it looks like, woo, this is going to be really tough.
Some of these words, especially the King James, get the Webster's, what is it, 1882 dictionary, and a lot of the words, they make more sense after reading the meanings in an old dictionary like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Than they do.
You know, King James Version is beautiful. It's very poetic. But the trouble is, language has changed so much that it ends up very difficult to understand. Unicorn isn't the best translation of that, but it's an honest translation. One horn. Yeah, one horn, and you know, that's what a unicorn is. You know, so, by the way, what happened to the unicorns? According to the Irish Rovers, and they've got to be reliable.
They were playing silly games.
Yes, they didn't get on the ark because they were playing silly games. All those unicorns. You got your green. Oh, I'm sorry. All right.
Okay, so I just looked it up. There is no ox that has one horn.
Did you look it up on your phone?
Yes,
You Googled it?
I did.
Okay.
60 years ago, no one knew what a cell phone was.
Yes, no, that's true.
But what it does say is it quotes the Bible, and it says either unicorn or wild oxen, and they quote in Numbers.
Yeah, there's more. I was just, this is a New Testament and Psalms in King James Version, so everything I'm doing for this part of it is out of the book of Psalms.
What
So.
it says in here is that the closest thing today would be a rhinoceros.
Yes, and a rhinoceros is the correct answer, by the way.
But I just think that's interesting.
Because, yeah, anyway, I'm not going to go into it, but I'm telling you, we'll wait till we get to the dinosaur stuff a little bit more. So I need someone to read Psalm 44, verse 19. I looked it up, so I know for sure I got it right. All right, who's doing that one? All right, Abby, woo! That was Psalm 44, verse 19. I'm looking these up because my handwriting got worse than usual all of a sudden. And that's saying something right there. I was running out of paper, so it was kind of being scrunched together. All right, and then it's Psalm 74, 13 through 14, I do believe. Yes. All right, Clyde, thank you. And let's see, and then Psalm 91, verse 13. That's the only one that was easy to read. Who's going to do that one?
I'll read it.
All right, thank you. 91:13, yes, that is correct. In 148, last one, Psalm 148, that's almost at the end of the book of Psalms. Psalm 148, I think verse 7, I'll tell you for sure in just a moment. Yes, that is correct. All right, Melinda. All right, so, all right, I'm going to read Psalm 44, verse 19 in the King James Version. And by the way, the King James Version is much better on this word. Okay? Though thou hast sore broken us in the place of dragons and covered us with the shadow of death. So what's the key word there? Dragons. And see, we hear dragons, and what do we think of?
Fire.
We think of fire-breathing dragons. Yeah, so, all right, so so this is referring to a scary beast. All right, scary beast. All right, so go ahead.
Yet you have broken us in the place of jackals and covered us with the shadow of death.
Yeah, jackals. Yeah, I'm going to tell you, this is ridiculous translation. But why is that? Because many of our translators, so, the Missouri Synod's pretty fussy about which Bibles it endorses. And ESV and NIV are on our approved list, But there's still, many of the people who do the translating have a not conservative view of Scripture. A conservative view of Scripture means every word is truth and accurate and right. That's how we read the Scripture. And they think, well, that's kind of a vague word, so I'm going to put in what I think they meant, which is a paraphrase. But they're kind of correcting the text. Because dragon, it would be a pretty honest translation of a Hebrew word that doesn't mean exactly dragon, but dragon gets closer to it. And by the way, if you think in the book of Revelation, where they have the dragon, which is representing Satan, dragons are always scary things, and I have no doubt that jackals are scary if you got a whole big group circling you and barking at you, and I don't doubt that.
But they're not huge.
This is not what that's about. All right, so that was Psalm 44:19. Psalm 74, this is my favorite, and you'll see why in just a little bit. And then I'm going to explain a little bit more about what's going on. All right, so this is Psalm 74, 13 and 14. Thou didst divide the sea by thy strength, and now that's referring to the parting of the Red Sea, okay? Thou breakest the heads of the dragons in the waters. So this is a water dragon. And then it's going to give it its proper name. So dragon here is the big word for a whole category of beasts, but each of the variants of those beasts had its own name. So here's where we first get a name of a specific type of dinosaur. Thou breakest the heads of Leviathan in pieces and givest him to be meat to the people inhabiting the wilderness. Now, Leviathan is one of the type of dragons that's specifically mentioned in the Bible, and that's one that we'll look at in detail in a little while. Maybe not today, but probably. So the word dragon when was the word dinosaur first used? And if you read the post I put on Facebook, it tells you, so that's a quiz. 1841, exactly. And so that means in Latin, great lizard or giant lizard or something like that, which is a good word to describe it. Well, up until the word 1841, that word wasn't in existence. So no one called these great beasts of the, by the word dinosaur. That doesn't mean they weren't referred to, but they were referred to by other words in other languages. And for Old Testament Hebrew, the word is dragon. And if you think of what we think of dragons, and you think of the Middle East where the brave knights, by the way, were all the reports of people battling dragons made up? Were those all myth? My answer is no. Every so often they find the remains of what I would call a sea dinosaur. This giant thing, and they don't know what it was, and it's not any category. What is it? A Loch Ness Monster. And I don't think that still exists, but I think it did. What is Loch Ness Monster? That was a dinosaur. It was a Leviathan, probably. But all those things of history, see, we make it all to be myth. And I have no doubt some of the stories are made up, but not the word dragon. That has been used for generations to describe a particular type of beast. The fire-breathing part probably is exaggeration, although I have no doubt their breath was not, because I have it on reliable authority, they didn't floss or brush all that often. And mainly people didn't tell them that their breath stank, so, so I just found that interesting, because in Psalm 74, we have the word dragon, sea dragon, and then it spells out its name. So, and that's what we would say, dinosaurs, and then we might say, well, T-Rex or Brontosaurus. Those are types of dinosaurs, but dinosaur is the broad name, and then we have the names that tell the individual species. That's what the Bible was doing too. All right, let's just look at these other two while we're in here. Psalm 91:13.
Did you have the reading of that one?
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't. Yeah, Clyde, I'm sorry.
Most of it. It was you who split open the sea by your power. You broke the heads of the monsters in the waters. It was you who crushed the heads of the Leviathan and gave him as food to the creatures of the desert.
All right, what version was that? Okay, that's what I thought. Because Leviathan, they leave it that word. Now, do you still have that open to that page? Look in the footnotes and see if it says anything about Leviathan. Usually they have a little footnote. What's that?
In the ESV it says the heads of the sea monsters.
Sea monsters, and the NIV just said monsters. Yeah, and that's a better translation because they can't say jackals. So they left it undefined. But notice the word is, these are scary, large beasts that only God could kill them. You wouldn't want to even attack them. We're going to see that. Yes?
So the Missouri Synod, if you ask people, is pretty conservative.
Yes.
So how can they accept blatantly? You understand what I'm asking? Because like you were supposed to know, not you didn't have to, but now they have to know Hebrew and they have to know Greek.
Yeah.
To become a pastor.
Yes.
So if that's the case, then how can they be okay with endorsing Bibles that don't?
Because they're the best of the lot, although imperfect. Now that's part of the reason why the Missouri Synod still wants highly trained pastors with a master's degree, because they want the pastors to be able to read. Now, I can't read Hebrew. I'm just telling you that. It wasn't required when I went through, and I was horrible at languages, so I wasn't going to do it voluntarily. Yeah, Pastor Paul, now, woo, he's a Hebrew scholar. He can, but yeah, so why? that's really one of the big concerns is there is no perfect translation of the Bible. There are pretty good ones, and then there's average, and then there's horrible, you know, where they don't even try to be word for word accurate. They just paraphrase and are putting whatever they want in there. But yeah, so that one was actually much better because it didn't define Leviathan away. And that's pretty much what we'll see. Now, you know, what's not so good is the other part of what they do. So we'll come to that. You got study Bible, don't you? Mm-hmm. All right, so I'll need you to look something on your footnote later. All right, and then we had Psalm 91, verse 13, I think. We haven't done that one. All right. Thou shalt tread upon the lion and adder. What is that? That's the snake. Did I pronounce that right? How do we? Adder? Okay. The young lion and the dragon shall thou trample under feet. And notice here he's talking about dangerous, poisonous things. Lion, poisonous snake, dragon. Yeah. All right. So who had Psalm 91, verse 13? Me. Okay.
You will tread upon the lion and the cobra.
Cobra? Okay, that's still close.
You will trample the great lion and the serpent.
And the serpent.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there, you know, and they were trying to think it was a parallel with the cobra, but it doesn't say that. The Hebrew word dragons are not a bad translation for that. All right, one other one, and that's Psalm 148, verse 7, yeah. And I wanted to do this to show you why dragons aren't mentioned in the Bible. They are, or why dinosaurs aren't mentioned in the Bible. They are, but what you have to look for them. You have to understand. So Psalm 148, verse 7, praise the Lord from the earth, ye dragons and all deeps. Now that's an interesting one because we think, well, how do dragons praise the Lord? But when you think of the variety of creatures that God made, both, you know, little and big and all, you know, they do bring glory to God's name. Go ahead.
Praise the Lord from the earth, you great sea creatures and all ocean depths.
Yeah. So they're still thinking mainly Leviathan type, I guess, but the word is broader than that. Yeah. Okay, so that's why we don't see the word dinosaur in the Bible, because it wasn't around back then. And when the authors are describing dinosaurs, somehow in translation it gets lost. So we're going to start with just a few basics, and then we'll get into some of the particulars. But let's start with when created. So that means go to Genesis 1, and I'm not giving you a page number. You're totally on your own. Good luck. Genesis 1, start at verse 20.
There you go.
Genesis 1, start at verse 20. So what I would tell you, throughout the book of Genesis, dinosaurs are there. You just have to notice them. Now here it's not language, it's by broad categories, but you know. So Genesis 1 verse 20, and God said, let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly across the earth, across the expanse of the sky. So God created the great creatures of the sea, and every living and moving thing with which the water teems according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind, and God saw that it was good. So I want you to think about that, and even notice the great creatures of the sea. Now, I would say that's referring to some of those larger type dinosaur creatures.
There's a note in the study Bible that says Hebrew animum used in mythology to refer to divine or semi-divine sea monsters.
Yes, sea monsters is it's not a bad translation, but that would be dinosaurs. The dinosaurs that live in water. And you can think Loch Ness Monster is an example of that. You know, that would be one. There's many different ones, but that would be a category.
Now that they've named them, there are a lot of dinosaurs that live in.
Yeah, and then we also have, what day was this, by the way? The 5th day, he made the dinosaurs that live in the water and the dinosaurs that flew through the air. So what are some of the names of the dinosaurs that flew through the air? Those who have children and grandchildren of the right age. Pterodactyl is one.
Dragon
Rain every morning. All them grandbabies.
Yeah.
They can probably tell you all about that.
And I'm going to tell you, dinosaurs are, they have been for a couple generations, but young kids are fascinated by dinosaurs, and I'm okay with that. But I'm going to tell you, so here's a commercial plug. So I brought 3 of the books that I sometimes talk about dinosaurs to our preschool. So this is a book these are all by Christian publishers, The Great Dinosaur Mystery in the Bible. And this one's a little more technical, but it's got the pictures. So if you have a kid that's fascinated by dinosaurs, you can teach them a biblical view of dinosaurs. This is one I use a lot because it has the great pictures. Dwayne Gish is a pretty famous creationist, really good arguments in favor of creation, but Dinosaurs by Design, but it's got a lot of good pictures, and the preschool kids, I can tell them anything as long as I'm showing them pictures of dinosaurs, And this one's by Ken Ham, Dinosaurs of Eden. And it too's got pictures and everything, so you can use it for younger kids. But
The ABCs.
the ABCs, and that's even for younger kids. Yes.
Did the names for all the species come about the time where the name dinosaur came out in the 1800s?
Yeah, the subspecies of them. I mean, I don't think. You can kind of think of the 1800s is when there were a lot of scientific breakthroughs, but mainly people didn't worry about fossils earlier. Why? It was a struggle to survive. There's things you got to work on. Fossils weren't the big thing, but in the 1800s, that's when we all started to, do these organized digs, and they would collect fossils and start putting them in museums later on in the 1800s. But it all kind of took off, and so then they have to come up with names, and so that's the word dinosaur. But that's where I guess Tyrannosaurus Rex would have. I think that
Since we grew up,
they've changed the
dinosaurs
name
mean-
substantially, because Brontosaurus does not exist anymore, and it. Yeah. Well, they've got now like 5 categories of it. James probably can tell me all of them, but Allosaurus was one of them, I think now. But and an Allosaurus is huge, but it's not the biggest one. Gigantosaurus, and that's not the right one.
But Allosaurus' name came out in the 1800s. They weren't there before that.
Yes. So those words, but we still called them something before that. And dragon really was through the Middle Ages, and that's 14, 15, 1600s even. Dragon was the preferred word for dinosaurs. All right, so anyway, and then go to verse 24. And God said, let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, livestock, creatures that move along the ground, and wild animals, each according to its kind. And so it was. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Now notice, in both of those, it keeps using the word kind. So what does that mean? Species. And they will reproduce according to their kind. So that means National Enquirer. How many of you love the National Enquirer? I used to. I really did. I would buy it now and then. This is when I was a teenager. But I kind of thought most of that stuff was kind of true. Maybe exaggerated, but kind of true. Woman gives birth to space alien was one of the headlines. Oh, wow. And I was thinking, whoa, wouldn't that be freaky if all of a sudden, because you don't have a human child, but you got some sort of alien being. So can humans give birth to an alien being? In science fiction movies, yes, but not in real life. People have what? People. We have people that raise chickens, and and chickens have chickens, and I've seen puppies, and they come from dogs, and cats don't come from dogs. Cats come from other cats, and the closest thing we have to almost breaking a rule is what? Donkeys, or what is it? Yeah, donkeys and horses. and you get a mule, but a mule is sterile and it can't reproduce because it's fixed. There's this fixed kind, and they were like kissing cousins, but even then they can't, you know, they can't, well, that's probably not kissing second cousins, you know. that would be a little closer.
Something real interesting about even things like similar. How many times they've tried to domesticate zebras and they can't.
Yes.
They said it's just they've tried and they've tried and yeah they try and they try, but they haven't all this time. They can't domesticate a zebra because it's not the same as a
Oh, come on, you know the jackalope is a real thing.
In Montana, they talk about it a lot.
I know, there's
We have the heads of jackalopes.
and there's like
with
places you
nice
can stop
set of
and see
antlers
them.
on it. Yeah. That's like snipe hunting a little bit of storytelling going in there. But I want you to see, so this is big, broad strokes of creation. It doesn't describe every species of animal that's being created. It does so by land animals, sea animals, and animals that fly. But that's when dinosaurs were created. Now notice, by the way, the land animals was 6th day, and that's when Adam and Eve were created too, 6th day. So did dinosaurs exist at the same time as humans?
Yes.
Because, you know, our science system says absolutely not. And yet the evidence actually says absolutely yes. For example,
They go to great means to cover up when they dig up a fossil that has a man's footprint next to a dinosaur. They go to great means to cut that out.
yeah,
So
that doesn't
people
get
can't
displayed
see
in the museum. Now, there are creation museums at different places. Of course, the big one is Ken Ham's. That is, if you've never been there, it's a fascinating experience. And the Ark is even better. So, you know, just keep that in mind, that if you really want to get a full exposure to kind of a biblical view of dinosaurs between the Creation Museum and the Ark, you can see in a beautiful, fun way. How many have been to either one of those Creation Museum or Ark? Yeah. You know, it's about, what is it, about 5-6 hours, something like that?
It needs to be a field trip when
Yeah,
this class is done.
yeah, we might need to do that. That would, yeah.
Said I'll go.
Oh yeah, because you know it's a thing you'd probably want to have 2 nights at least, because you travel probably maybe even 3 nights. Because here's what I'd do: I'd travel, get a hotel room or something. 1 day Creation Museum, 1 day Ark, and then the next day you come back. You know, but
4 days.
yeah, that would be the best way. You could do it shorter, because quite honestly, I would put a full day at the Ark, and I could do a half day at the Creation Museum if I had to. So if we needed to cut it down to 3 days, then we'd do the Creation Museum and then travel home in the second half of the day or something. But at first, when there was no Ark, I thought the Creation Museum was everything.
They had that stuff over.
But they now the Ark does a better job telling the story than even the Creation Museum. But books galore. If you go to you know, Google the name Ken Ham, or the Creation Institute, I think is his group, you know, or Creation Museum, you'll find all the resources you ever want on a biblical view of dinosaurs. So I'm giving you snippets, you know, and we're going to spend a couple weeks on this, but you know, if you want the full stuff, I've got books in there. These are not the ones with the cute pictures, you know, but I got them. If you really want to be intellectually challenged, it'll explain it all.
I've read on it, talk about the 1800s late when they started with the dinosaurs. If you look into it, and that's probably why some of the names are changing now, but back then they would just have a couple pieces.
Yeah.
And then they would just, well, that's what this thing is. You know, they were kind of, or they would get a bunch of pieces and not know exactly how they were.
And they might not all fit together. It might be more than remains of more than one dinosaur, because, well, I don't want to jump ahead, but yeah. Yes, Denise.
Well, a neat thing that happened in my mind, we went to the Creation Museum and to the Ark, and my oldest brother joined us there, some of the other family members too, but he was uncertain, because we would have debates, and he he believed the stuff. He was uncertain that all of it was right because he leaned a little more towards the science.
He believed Jesus. Don't get ready. But he was questioning Genesis.
Believed some of the dinosaur stuff existed, but after he went through the ark and he saw the airplane that went down in 1940, was it like 42 or something like that, and it went down, I think, in Alaska or somewhere where it snowed a lot. And then when they dug down and they found, according to the way they do science, it would be millions of years old. Mm-hmm. But when you looked at every time it snowed, a new layer would form. And that's how it formed its layers. And so then he swayed back on that one and he's like, okay, yeah, you're right on that. But then he still didn't believe that they were mentioned in the Bible until we went to the Creation Museum and they had a whole dragon display, and that just got him because he has always loved dragons.
He kind of likes medieval time type stuff, you know.
And when they showed, well, this is the dragon that would have been in the Bible, then he was like, okay, I'm convinced, So that field trip per se in itself is something wonderful to take young adults to take anybody to, just so that they can see, because you can't even fathom how big the ark is until you're standing in front of that thing.
And
it's crazy.
So that we're going to look at the ark. Probably not today. Maybe we'll start. I don't know. But because that's a key question of, all right, what happened to the dinosaurs? Well, most of them died out when? Flood. But, 2 of every type of animal went on the ark. And by the way, that includes dinosaurs. So did they have 2 huge T-Rexes? They would have had babies. And we're talking reptiles. So what's true? A crocodile. How big is a baby crocodile? And then how big is it in 1 year? A little bit bigger. In 2 years, a little bit bigger. And in 10 years, it's scary, But it grows every single year. So when you think of the huge dinosaurs, you're thinking of the full-grown, every year they're getting a little bit bigger. But no one's going to take a giant T-Rex on a ship, So what are they going to take? They're going to take someone 6 months old, some kids, because that's a lot easier, less food you have to give them, a lot easier to keep contained and safe, and, So, but if you understand the ark, the flood, and the ice age that came shortly after the worldwide flood, because you think of the tropical conditions that they had and then everything changed, that what is true of reptiles when it gets really cold? They're cold-blooded, meaning their blood is the temperature. So when you see those blue-tailed salamanders out on the church or all over in the sun, what are they doing? They're warming up, and that way their stomachs will process food better. They got to do that. They need external sources of heat. Well, if it's really cold, you know what? They hibernate or die. And so were dinosaurs easy for the knights to slaughter if it was really cold for a number of years with glaciers coming on down, and all of a sudden, woolly mammoths in Alaska, now it's a lot easier to kill one if it's threatening your village. Yeah, and feed the village. So it's just when you kind of have a biblical view of world history, it's all different. Now, let's just say, how old is the Earth? And we can't give an exact date. Is it, let's see, the universe is supposed to be, 4 billion, or is it longer than that now? They keep changing it. Yeah. But the sun is supposed to be so many billion, Earth so many, I don't know. But dinosaurs, I know they say the oldest ones are 700 million years ago and all that stuff. The one person who was there when everything began, wrote about it. It's called Genesis. And yet right away we start throwing out everything. So technically, as a Bible-believing Christian, I am a young earth creationist. So if you want to know how other people would label me, well, one, they'd say I'm nuts, but I'm a young earth creationist, meaning I don't know exactly how old the earth is, but it's not millions of years. It's not hundreds of thousands of years. The genealogy that you find in the Bible, you know, we can go from Adam to Christ pretty easily. It's not quite exact, because the word that's translated was the father of just means was an ancestor of. It may be a grandfather. There could be a little longer generations in there. But, you know, like Ken Ham is going to say the earth is 6,000 and so many years. I could believe that. But on the other hand, I'd be okay saying it's 8,000 or 10,000 years. But it's young earth, meaning it's not millions of years. You know, so, all right. All right, ask a few questions, because I'm kind of just, yes?
We have these people that are exploring the ocean, and they say that they see monsters that's down there that, you know, haven't ever been seen.
Yes.
How could that be something like that?
Well, see, I firmly believe that. I think, you know, for example, a couple years ago, one of the islands of Japan, and I'm not going to have all the details because I just read it, I didn't memorize it, but a creature washed up on shore, and they had no idea what it was, but it was huge. It would have been kind of like a Loch Ness monster, but yeah, you know. And they had no explanation for it because it doesn't fit into anything. Now, what I would say is that was one of the great sea dinosaurs, and you know, when we act like we know everything on Earth, we don't. You know, how many Bigfoot are out there? A lot more than, you know, Marion, they told me up in Marion that you know, they see them all the time. Didn't they have a Bigfoot festival up there? I meant to go, I didn't get to go. I mean, but you know, I don't really believe in Bigfoot per se, but I'm just telling you, every so often there are reports of, you know, some of the jungle areas of the Amazon forest or in Africa where the people still talk about these great beasts that they've seen. You know, I don't know if that's true, could be myth. But on the other hand, that wouldn't shock me, because I really think that Loch Ness monster, there really was something there.
I mean, they wouldn't have been wiped out during the flood.
No, they would.
Because they were in the water.
Yes, so sea dinosaurs could easily survive, you know, because Noah didn't have to put anybody on the ark that already could live in water. So, I mean, that's easy. And in the Ice Age would have affected some, but the Ice Age didn't affect the entire planet. It affected 2/3 maybe, but the equator, there still would have been warmer water. So yeah, they could have survived. So yes, we could easily explain that. And even, the land dinosaurs, the flood would have killed most, but then he releases some. Where did the ark land? You know, don't know for sure, although somewhere Middle East-ish probably, you know, Northern Africa, something like that. But, you know, where do they migrate to? Well, at first down towards Africa, which is where some of the reports come. Then they would have eventually migrated across land bridges all the way to America, by the way. Montana, where I lived for a year, there's some great digs for, and they find in one site hundreds of dinosaur fossils. Now that, you know, it's not coincidence that all these dinosaurs died in this one spot. They didn't, but that's where after the flood, their remains washed up. That's where, you know, everything kind of settled. Yeah, there's a lot of things that make sense if you can just kind of have a little questioning about the typical scientific explanation and put on that biblical worldview. Because worldwide flood really explains, well, I'm jumping ahead. I'm going to not be able to talk. I'll have nothing to say next week. I only have so much knowledge, so I don't want to blow it all in one session. Yes, go ahead.
Well, two things. One, how did they explain evolution when years ago, people lived to be hundreds of years old, and now you're very fortunate if you live to be 100. So how did
Now,
they...
their explanation is that wasn't really true. That's just the Bible, and it's made up and nonsense. Now, we would say, did you notice before the flood, everything lived longer?
I heard an explanation that, and I don't know if it was Ken Ham, it was somebody I was reading. Basically, the atmosphere changed.
Oh, yes, it did.
Pre and post-flood.
Because we could argue, it's not proven, we could argue it never rained until the flood.
Well, one of them was the pterodactyl. They said that there's people that believe, or the scientists say, under the current atmospheric conditions, they couldn't fly with just the sheer size of them. But if it had to do with the water content in the air, and if the atmosphere was heavier, it would allow larger.
And when you look at Genesis 1 and it describes the days of creation, it talks about this canopy. This. And what is that? That's atmosphere, but it's water atmosphere. I mean, because and then it talks about it divides the waters below from the waters above, and it is totally different climate. And if you think greenhouse effect, everything grew. Everything grew, perfect. And perfect genetics, too, by the way. All the animals and people had perfect genetics.
They didn't eat each other.
They didn't eat each other, Yeah, I hate to admit this, but they ate green beans and stuff like that in the beginning. Yeah. But Jesus okayed eating meat because he ate it. So, I mean,
I don't understand how they decided the first thing was millions of years old. What did they have to compare it to?
They came up with a vast number because they needed a vast number. In other words, you've been alive, let's say, 35 years. That's because you're young.
I have been alive 35 years.
Yes. See, there you go. At least. I'm trying to make up because I picked on her whistling. I don't want her mad at me all day. But if you think of it, have you seen a lot of change within humankind in the couple of generations that you have observed? I've seen it somewhat, but genetically, what is different? Now, if you look at Fort Fisher Civil War Museum out by the coast, look at the size of the Confederate uniforms they have there. They're a lot shorter. We're a lot taller. Yeah. Now, part of that's nutrition, part of that's but we could say maybe we're slowly getting taller as a species. But notice that's all changed with, they had tall people back then. Now maybe we have just a few more tall people. But don't tell her I said this. Linda Travis isn't really tall.
When you look at the architecture, when you look at architecture and you see these 20-foot doors going into these huge buildings, you go, wait a minute.
Right.
Yeah, but but if you go into some of the older houses, like someone told me one time, Biltmore, the beds that they slept on are like 5 feet long.
No, they're longer. It's an optical illusion.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway.
It's because of the height. No, seriously, it's because of the height of the four posters. Because I asked that. I'm like, how could they sleep on that? Didn't their feet hang over? And they said that bed's just as long as yours, but because it's so much higher and the posts go up, it looks shorter.
Okay. See, I thought they were midgets. I don't know.
I asked that question.
But I mean, so I'm going to be honest with you. So as Christians, I believe in microevolution. Microevolution is change within species, because you can take fruit flies and keep, picking who they mate with, and you can have slightly different fruit flies. Now, you're not coming up with a new species. You're just, you're advocating change within that species, but it's stuff that already exists genetically. Dogs, you can breed them, and you really don't, you're not coming up with a new species. You're just coming up with dogs that are a little different,
When your environment changes, our body learns to adjust to it.
Yeah.
But if you think about, there were, I'm going to call them pioneers, but when people were going west and doing all of that stuff, they were hardier. They weren't all stick-thin people.
Why did you look at my arms when you said that?
But I'm saying, in today's society, everybody's supposed to be what? A size, I don't even know.
Yeah, for females, you're supposed to be like less than an 8 or something, or whatever they say. Because you look at those models, some of them are zeros, and it's like, grow up, have a happy life.
Have a steak.
Yeah, eat something.
Amen. Have a piece of cake.
That's right.
But I'm saying, if you look throughout history, like you said, there were times where the ceiling, the doorways were taller. There were times when people were wider. There were times, and then there was.
You had the David and Goliath.
Yes. Well, and what is there's a disease they call giantism or something. That's but Andre the Giant, he had that disease. And by the way, one of my favorite actors, Princess Bride, you can't get better than Andre the Giant. Oh, that was so good. And pro wrestler. Ooh, I want to fight him.
I do have one more question.
Yes, go for it. I'm being silly.
In the history, am I wrong that it's cyclical? Like we have cold times and warmer times and colder times and warmer. And it's not, because all we hear now is it's just getting hotter and hotter and hotter.
And you know what? I think the last few years has been hotter. So I mean, I have no problem saying that.
I remember when I was in school, they talked about we were coming into an ice age.
Yes, 1970s, Time Magazine, because my dad subscribed to Time Magazine, and I'd read it too. And 1970s, they had a cover, The Coming Ice Age.
Wasn't it 1976 that, I'm pretty sure that was somewhere in there, that we had that big giant blizzard in Indiana that, I mean, it was out in the country. You couldn't get anywhere unless you had.
So, for example, now we were supposed to, many parts of the country had a milder winter this year. Not in Alaska. They had more snow and more cold than usual. In fact, their spring was colder than normal. And so it kind of, when you talk about global warming, well, yeah, parts are, and maybe parts aren't, but it is a cyclical nature. So, can mankind contribute to that? I'm sure we can. But am I worried about it? Absolutely not, because I know the one who's in charge of weather. Yeah. So anyway, but I'm just going to finish one thought, and then we have to stop, because otherwise I have to pay Abby overtime. Donnie has agreed not to take overtime, but Abby has not signed that agreement. Yeah, she does need college money. That's right. But microevolution has changed within species. Yeah, that's no problem. We believe in that. We don't believe in macroevolution, where one species changes into another species. And I just want to tell you, scientifically, and this is Genesis 1 discussion, how did they explain how species could change? Genetic what? Mutation. Now, you think of babies that have genetic mutations, and that includes my grandson, by the way. Are those mutations helpful or harmful? They're always harmful, because if you think of computer code, you get a virus in there, it's never helpful. It always, what you're doing is losing part of that code. And genetically, a mutation is taking away part of the code that makes us what we are, and it's never better. So yes, you can pass on genetic mutations, because for example, Micah's, I think he had to get it from both sides of the family, and most of the time the mutation's in somebody's genes, but most of the time you don't get it both sides of the family where it's going to show up. But it's never helpful. So if it's survival of the fittest, like they say, well, those who suffer from genetic mutations are not more able to survive, they're less able to survive. And we've never found a genetic mutation that's helpful.
However, I want to make a statement to this. Yeah. I have never found a person that has a genetic mutation that I do not believe that was not God's creation, and that was the way they created them. And there is always something special and so much I don't even know how to explain it.
Yes, and
the
so-
rest of us could benefit from.
So for the perfect
having-
example is Down syndrome. And of course, they can detect Down syndrome before birth, and they will advise you probably want to get an abortion. Down syndrome babies, there's a waiting list that's years long if people would be willing to adopt a Down syndrome baby. They rarely come up because people killed them. Now, Down syndrome individuals are not a curse. I'm going to tell you, some of the nicest, happiest, most loving people are Down syndrome. Now, are there things they can't do? Yeah, but there's things I can't do. I mean, that's not a reason, you know, we all are imperfect in different ways, but that's not a reason that we have to get rid of. So, yes, totally. So, yes,
Because I don't like it when people say it's I don't know. I just feel like everything God makes is perfect.
Well, so in Haiti,
One of the things Christians had to do was they would go to the dumps and look around for babies that were discarded. Because if you were imperfect, so if you were born without a hand or something, that was considered a curse, and they didn't want a cursed child, and so they would throw the baby. And so while we toured a Christian hospital while we were there, and we met a young man, I don't know, he's probably 2 years old or something now, but he had been in the hospital for a long, long time. But he was abandoned by his family in a dump. There were wild pigs that were living in that dump. One of them ate part of his hands, I guess, or something. But it's like they look at babies in some of those cultures as cursed, as problems we got to get rid of. And the neat thing is that we're all these Christian agencies that are out there hunting for them, and they'll find homes for them, and they'll be loved and taken care of. You know, but yeah, but our society's no different. We just kill them not by putting them in a dump. We kill them beforehand. You know, so all right. So next time we're going to start in the Ark and look at some stuff. But when dinosaurs were created at the same time as humans,
Yes.
and existed at the same time for a lot of years. So we're starting with that. All right, let's close in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for your clear word. Help us to read, understand, and share it so that more and more people can come to see the wisdom of your plan. In Christ's name we pray, amen. Appreciate all you coming. It was really exciting. We got some new people here. This is awesome. We have a few more that will be coming next week too. Yeah, come and look at James' dinosaur egg and stuff.